Welcome to Don't Quote Me on That. One day we will have an intro, but today is not that day.
Hello, and welcome back to Don't Quote Me on That. I'm Kalina, and as you can see, and once again see, I'm alone. My co-host, the light of my life, the moon to my stars, Eleanor, is not here, and I'm very sad about it. So I'm wearing these little earrings Eleanor got me. So Eleanor, if you're watching this, I did in fact put them on. You have photographic video evidence now. Anyway, another quick little episode because it's been me by myself for the last 3 weeks. I'm sure you all are sick of me. I am sick of me. So I'm gonna do another little tier list. I thought that was fun. I'm planning on doing a sequel to the Disney Boys tier list I did a few weeks ago. I did get some requests to do that. So I'm still trying to decide if I should do a Disney Boys one or do Disney Girls for the sequel. But I'll probably end up doing a second Disney Boys one anyway. So just let me know what you guys think I should do, what you guys want. Feedback has been mixed. I just know you guys want a sequel. Anyway, so I thought in a similar vein, I would do another tier list. Also, I'm laying on my bed, so pretend I'm not, if you see my foot in the background, no, you don't. So I'm doing another tier list, long story short. And I went and saw the new Haunted Mansion movie on Monday with a friend, and we thought it was really good, and I liked it a lot. I've seen, really bad reviews for it, actually, and I'm surprised. I thought they'd be, at the very least, more, kind of split. So I liked it. I thought it was good. But I thought it'd be fun to do a tier list ranking, movies, and then I don't want to say sequels, and I don't really know what the correct term for this is. I guess technically they're sequels. I just feel like they're not. But, sequels or reboots or, remakes that aren't really directly connected to the storyline, if that makes sense. So the example I always use is Jumanji. The original Jumanji with Robin Williams. Love that movie. I used to watch it a lot when I was younger. And so then they made the new Jumanji with, The Rock and Kevin Hart and all those people. And, yes, it's the same universe, but one, I don't think when they made the first Jumanji, they were ever oh, we're going to, make a sequel to this. Certainly not years and years down the line, and certainly not in such a different tone than the original Jumanji was. The original Jumanji, while it had funny moments, I think was a lot more serious, obviously, than the ones they make now. So they, serve different functions. They, fill different gaps in the market, so to speak. So, anyway, that's sort of the vibe in terms of sequels that I'm going for. Things that, are connected, but maybe weren't intended to be connected when the original came out. So kind of, in that vein of Ellen and I talk a lot about how I think a lot nowadays production companies and people who make movies rely a lot on nostalgia rather than original ideas. And I think we're getting sequels. We talk about this with Disney a lot. They remake a lot of movies where I think the movies should be remade, yes, but not yet. So kind of about talking movies that I feel like they tapped into nostalgia more so than a genuine good novel take on the situation or the environment or the universe or whatever the movie's about, and kind of how they rank to the original and how I like them. Obviously, this is all subjective based on what I like. I watch 3 movies, to be honest with you, so it depends. Anyway, I think we'll get right into it. We'll start with Haunted Mansion. I'll put the tier list up on the screen, but I'm gonna keep the not categories, the movies hidden until we pick them. So I'm just going to take a little glance here. So we've got the original Haunted Mansion. We'll start with that because that was the whole reason I did it. Okay, just kidding. We're going to start with the new Haunted Mansion because I grabbed that one by accident. So the new Haunted Mansion. Also, before we start, I really don't think I'm going to have any S tier movies just because of the movies I picked for this. Just none of them for me personally are S tier movies. But anyway, the new Haunted Mansion. I liked it a lot because I loved the Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy when I was younger because it was just funny. I thought it was great. I liked anything spooky, but especially as a kid, I wasn't scared of a lot of things, but I think if we're marketing to that audience of young kids, you can't go too heavy on the spookiness, so to speak. So while it had those elements, it was alleviated very quickly and balanced out very well by, to be honest, just Eddie Murphy by himself, but the film as a whole. But Eddie Murphy is obviously a comedian. He is known for making people laugh. He's very good at it. So to me, the second one was funny, but in a way that it wasn't overt, is the way I always say. I laughed the entire movie. I did. My friend and I were chuckling throughout, even at moments where, like, sometimes in a movie or like a show, when they do something funny, and I'm not talking like sitcoms where there's like a live audience and they like actually clap and cheer. I'm talking about like just sometimes there's a bit of a pause or enough of like a scene change or just like this moment for you to kind of bask in the humor. Whereas in the Haunted Mansion, I didn't find they were doing that, so the humor wasn't as overt. It was something that like if I were living the real life situation like the characters are in the movie, obviously I wouldn't find it funny, but like in retrospect it's funny, or like you got to find humor to kind of lighten the horror of things, and which was very much the case in this movie. Also Lakeith Stanfield, I think, did a really good job. I thought the costuming specifically for him and the lady who played his wife was really nice. Rosario Dawson, I thought it was a really great cast. Owen Wilson, I think, can sometimes fall into like a typecasting sort of area where he's playing the same characters over and over again. So I really liked he got some dimension here, but was still Owen Wilson at the same time. Same thing with Danny DeVito. Is they're like both of them got the chance to like show that yes, we are respected actors for a reason. It's not just we do this one thing and we're goofy and people like us. And the little kid I also thought was great. I don't know his name, unfortunately, sorry, but the little kid playing the son in the movie, also very good. Jamie Lee Curtis, fantastic. I hate to give, I know the internet has mixed feelings about Jared Leto, so not to give him praise, especially after the whole Suicide Squad debacle, but I think him as the antagonist, sorry, I don't want to spoil too much, so as the antagonist was very good. All of that said and done, I'm stuck between B and C for this, just because it was better than I thought it was going to be, but like still like not great. And I think Disney should go with new ideas, but also because like I kind of get why they're doing it, and I really love the Haunted Mansion rides. I liked how they fleshed out the lore and were tying it in to the lore of the Haunted Mansion ride. So I think B. Like, I think it has the potential to go to A tier, but I'm going to put it in B just because I think if I weren't such a fan of the Haunted Mansion ride and, like, the lore behind it and that sort of shebang, I'd put it in A. Sorry, I'd put it lower. If I was just watching it as a film with, like, no like, if I was, I don't know, like my brother. How was my brother going in? I have no context of this. Well, I don't know why I had to call him my brother. But anyway, if I was someone going in with no context, no like frame of reference, no necessarily founded love for the universe in which this takes place and the universe and the lore behind it, I'm going to try to stop using that word. I wouldn't have liked it as much. It was a good movie on its own. I just think it kind of elevates to B tier because of those things. And that word I will not say again. So anyway, fun stuff. Now for the original Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy. I originally thought I was going to put this higher than the new one, but now that I'm looking at it, I kind of feel like it's got to go on the same level because it fills a different pocket, and I like that movie as much as I like the new one, but for different reasons. I feel like I like this movie more, but I think my judgment is clouded a little bit by the fact that like it was something I watched a lot when I was younger. And again, nostalgia. Movie makers tap into nostalgia for a reason. So, not that I'm saying the original Haunted Mansion doesn't deserve the hype it gets, because I think it's a good movie and I think it's a standalone, but I do think, I just feel like my judgment's being clouded a little bit by the nostalgia. But I'm actually, forget everything I just said. I'm putting an A anyway. I think it's a really good movie. I think it's funny. I think it sets up the stage very well for the new one. I think the new one could have stood on its own if the original didn't exist, but I think the Haunted Mansion, for people who aren't as into the spooky side or like too much into details behind Disney rides and like the storylines Disney comes up with for them, I think it kind of gave you a nice little like introduction to that. It piqued the interest of people who wouldn't normally be interested in lore, if that makes sense. Also, I think Eddie Murphy's hilarious. I really do. Every Thanksgiving, my family and I watched this movie, Tower Heist, with Eddie Murphy in it. My dad dies laughing every single time because Eddie Murphy plays this thief with like very specific rules. Like he was like, I never rob anything from inside. Like I never go into a person's apartment and rob things. I only rob things from their balcony, because if I went inside their apartment, that'd be breaking and entering. So I'm just, I'm not breaking and entering. I'm just stealing things. So good movie. We watch it every Thanksgiving because it, like, the main conflict, the climax of the movie takes place during the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So anyway, A tier for original Haunted Mansion, B tier for the second one. I think if nostalgia wasn't attached to these, they'd both be a step lower. So like, original would be in B, new one would be in C, but they're not, so we're moving on. Okay, next we're gonna do what kind of helped me helped me come up with this idea, because after I watched Haunted Mansion, I was like, I want to do something with this, but I don't want to just do a movie review, because one, I didn't take notes while I was watching. I was just trying to, I'm in the movie theater, I don't want to do that, and my memory is like not fantastic. I'm sure we're shocked. And also because I like these movies, so that's Jumanji. Same thing with the Haunted Mansion. I feel like I want to put this in A. I'm just going to drop it here so I'm not holding it. I'm going to drop it in A for now, just because of nostalgia. I had this little TV that only had a couple channels on it and a DVD player. So I kind of watched the same, like, when I was younger. So I kind of watched the same things. Like, I used to watch a lot of The Nanny, because I'd be up around the same time every night, and The Nanny was playing at the same time every night. But Jumanji was a movie I remember coming on, and I was always catching pieces of it. Like, I remember watching it straight through, and then I was always catching pieces of it. And I remember Jumanji really freaking me out, because when the jungle comes to the quote-unquote real world, I'm not someone who gets spooked easily. Even when I was younger, things didn't really bother me in that way. I remember this movie being spooky to me, but now I like spooky things. I like horror movies. So I kind of want to leave Jumanji in A tier, just because of the appreciation I have for it now that I didn't necessarily have. Kind of the opposite of the original Haunted Mansion. The appreciation I have for it now is different than the appreciation I had for it then. Also, Robin Williams is, great. I don't think this is his best work, to me personally. That to me would be more Good Will Hunting, Dead Poet Society, which I'm sure, like, I know are very basic answers. Mrs. Doubtfire, all very basic answers, but like, I think those really showcase, like, not that this doesn't showcase his talents. Just for me personally, I like his performances in those better. I like the story that's being told better. But I'm gonna leave Jumanji in A tier, just because, well, Robin Williams gives it is like, S tier on his own. So like, factoring him into the overall score bumps him up. Then the new Jumanji, I think I'm gonna get some backlash for where I'm gonna put this. I lied, everyone. I was wrong. I'm gonna put the new Jumanji in S tier, because I don't rewatch movies. I don't like to do it. It's like, if I rewatch a movie, it'll be like years and years after, except for like a handful of things, because everyone's got their movies that like define them, that tell you who they are as a person. And I wouldn't say the new Jumanjis define me or tell me who I am as a person, but I could rewatch these movies like very often. It's like they're right in line for me with the Madagascar movies. I think the Madagascar movies are the peak of cinema. I think they're some of the best animated movies of all time. I genuinely think Madagascar 2 is a perfect movie. I could sit down and watch Madagascar 2 like for a week straight and never get bored of it. And I laugh every single time I watch it. So the new Jumanji falls into Madagascar territory for me, whereas I could always watch it and enjoy it and find it humorous. It's not nearly as serious and deep or spooky as the original, until the end, I would say. I like how the end kind of gives you this nice message without trying to delve too deep into it. I don't like when movies or music or shows or whatever try to throw a message of like morality at the end when they hadn't set that up the whole film. So this kind of does, with the character that Nick Jonas plays. Also, I love this movie. I don't know any of these characters' names, okay? Because I just referred to them as their actors' names. Also, I'm trying to justify why I'm putting this in S tier, but just know it belongs there. In my heart, it belongs there. The first time I saw this movie, it was when it had come out, and I was in London with my cousin, and I hadn't seen her for years, and we decided to go to the movies, and we watched this, and Nick Jonas popped up. So one, it's tied to this good memory with my cousin. 2, I was always a Nick girl growing up. And Nick Jonas popped up while we were watching Jumanji, and I was like, oh, this is like a fun little cameo. I'm so excited about this. But it wasn't a cameo. He was in the rest of the movie. And I don't know if I mentioned this before. I was a Nick girl growing up. I'm sorry, Joe Jonas, and I'm sorry, Kevin, but we all know the two big camps were Joe and Nick. I was never a Joe Jonas girl. I get it now, but Nick was my guy, okay? So that just, like, I thought the rest of the movie was great. I don't even think I processed what happened, because I was like, Nick Jonas in a little pilot outfit. He's so cute. And then when at the end, when he's Colin Hanks, I think is just, I like Colin Hanks. I like Tom Hanks, America's Dad and all that. So I don't want to say I think Jumanji is a perfect movie, because I don't think it is. But I think for like easy entertainment. Also, I think it's like very accessible. I watched this over Christmas one year with my friend who doesn't speak English. And we couldn't get we couldn't get Spanish subtitles for her, but like she could follow the movie and knew what was going on because she'd seen it before in Spanish a while before, but like she could follow along in English with her limited English and like track the story, and was even laughing at jokes. So it's accessible. It's got Nick Jonas in it. It's funny. It's got Nick Jonas in it. And I think it's one of the times where The Rock kind of plays The Rock in every movie. But like, one, I do think he has some nuance here actually, because he's playing, because it's like a mind bend, okay? He's what, Nick? I think it's Nick Wolf, or maybe Nate Wolf. It's one of the Wolf brothers. It's The Rock playing, well, I guess it's The Rock pretending to be the guy in The Rock's body playing a doctor. There's levels to this, okay? So I think he gets some nuance, but at the same time, I think when he gets to be The Rock, it's not like a cop-out and more genuinely contributing to the story. All of that said and done, I think Madagascar 2 is a perfect movie. Moving on. What should we do next here? Oh, okay, we'll do Ghostbusters, the OG Ghostbusters first. I'm going to drop everything in D tier as I talk about them, just so you guys don't see the rest of my list, even though I'm sure you've seen the rest of my list already. I have to scroll to look at it. But anyway. So the original Ghostbusters, I think I've seen, if I have seen it in its entirety, it was once, but I'm not, and now that I'm doing this, I'm not confident I've seen it in its entirety. I do remember very distinctly a scene of them in the library. So I don't think it's fair for me to judge this. So I'm going to put it in B just because it's like middle of the road. I know a lot of people like this, but I don't get the feeling they necessarily like it. This is going to sound bad, so bear with me. I don't get the feeling they like it because it's a good movie, but more because it's a cult classic. Now, I'm not saying cult classics can't be good, but I think, back to the nostalgia argument, that kind of amplifies their feelings about the movie. Does that make sense? And especially compared to the sequel that they made later with an all-female Ghostbusters team, which got a lot of flack because they were women. Like, it didn't even get flack for the plot. Like, I'm sure it did when it came out, but all I saw before it came out was, we don't need women, and, you know, misogynistic things that unfortunately the internet is known for and very good at doing. So I watched it, the new one. I thought it was fine. I thought it was funny. It gave me a good chuckle. I loved Himbo, Chris Hemsworth, as their receptionist. I do feel it was a little bit of like a, unfortunately, I hate to say this, and I don't, not to sound like I'm not a feminist, I do feel like the new Ghostbusters did feed in a little bit, and the origin was a little bit to be like, look, like we're marketing this to women. This is a woman gender swapped Ghostbusters, and not so much because they genuinely wanted to tell that story and increase diversity. It felt like diversity was the marketing ploy and not the intent, if you're following me. So I'm gonna have to put this in C tier. It was a fine movie. Like, I think if you're trying to compare it to the original Ghostbusters, also it's not something that necessarily holds up very well, but I think as a standalone, it's a movie you can throw on and have fun, you know, laugh at it and not really take it too seriously and not have to think about it too deeply afterwards. It's not necessarily going to stick with you. Which is a shame, because I think they had like a good cast, like Kate McKinnon, obviously. I love Melissa McCarthy. Good SNL group there, actually. But yeah, I just felt like diversity was the marketing point and not the intention. So anyway, moving on. Let's see what we got next. Oh, okay, we're gonna do Rocky. And okay, well, it didn't download, but we're here already, and I'm not gonna go find it. I will find it. 2 seconds. Okay, just kidding. I'm not gonna find it because I don't know how to add back in images to my tier list because I already made it. I think I'd have to like go back and start over, and we're already here, so we're gonna go. You all are just you're gonna envision with me, okay? And who I'm gonna have you envision, it's easy. But we'll start with Rocky since that's the OG. What can I say about Rocky? One thing I can say about Rocky, I do think there might have been too many movies, okay? I think maybe at best we should have stopped at 3. But also, Sylvester Stallone, Sly is like, I get why there were 4. I just think we could have stopped at 3. Probably 2. But I get the hype around boxing movies. I think this is very appropriate also. I know there were some big fights over the weekend. I will not weigh in on what I thought should have happened and what I thought happened, yada, yada, yada. But I get the hype. I get the quote-unquote cult around boxing movies. I think if you're a boxer, it's obvious why there's a connection. It makes you feel, gives you that power. If you're a fighter of any sort, but even for like quote-unquote, I guess non-boxers, laymen, normal people who don't train in martial arts of any sort, it is still a story of perseverance. I think I'm saying that word correctly. Perseverance. I don't know. It sounds weird in my head right now. But it's something you can like physically see. Obviously, you getting punched. Like, I think when you're dealing with life, sometimes people are like, life feels like life's beating me up right now. I feel like I'm getting punched in the face by life. So like to watch someone encounter that, a situation that most people won't ever be in, to encounter that for real, having someone punch them in the face and working past it and bettering themselves and doing those steps every day to do that, I think just is motivating and empowering for no matter who you are. So anyway, this picture's of Rocky 3. I just meant Rocky in general. Also, this was the only one I think that had like a bunch of movies before. And then obviously the sequel that I'll talk about is Creed, which had a bunch of movies after. Which I think is appropriate. Like, most of these are one-offs, except for Jumanji, because Jumanji, the original, was a one-off. But then the Jumanji sequels, quote-unquote sequels, I think there's 2. And I think they're working on a 3rd one. Or at least they left this. I remember at the end of the 2nd one, they did leave a setup for a 3rd one, which I don't think we needed. But I am interested to see where it goes, because, again, I think those movies are funny and an easy watch. Also, it's been a minute since I've seen Rocky. But and this is hard because it's a bunch of movies, like if I was just judging one of them, I'd give it a different tier than like the Rocky, it's not a trilogy, the Rocky series as a whole. But I'm going to leave it at B just because, like I said, I was thinking about the whole 4-movie, 3-movie, we didn't need all that shebang. But it's still a good series. I think it stands up. Now, obviously, the sequels are Creed with Michael B. Jordan. Like I said, he should be easy to picture. We've seen that man. If you can't picture Michael B. Jordan, I don't know what you dream about in your free time, because I dream about Michael B. Jordan. I have mixed feelings about this one. I didn't love the second Creed. I like what it set up for the 3rd one. And I think it told a good story. I think it carried the story on very well, but it was kind of for me. And I really liked the story of the 3rd one. Well, that's a lie. I got the story of the 3rd one. I didn't like that Sly wasn't in it. And I felt like it was just like too many things. Like Creed was fighting one guy, but then like the one guy was not the guy who was who was trying to turn out to be his antagonist the whole time. I'm sure, listen, I'm trying not to spoil this, but I'm sure you all know. It wasn't Jonathan Majors. I was expecting Jonathan Majors to were carrying the storyline throughout the beginning. We have to go through a whole bunch of other stuff first to get into that storyline, so I didn't like that. But that final fight scene is so good, just cinematically. I think Michael B. Jordan, because he directed that one, is a genius. And like, if I were to judge Creed off of that scene alone, I would, if I could give it something higher than S tier, I would. It's so good. And if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. purely for that last scene. But because of all the other stuff, and because we're judging Creed as a series and not as individual movies, because we'd be here forever trying to go through the plots of them, I would also put Creed, just imagine my mouse is Creed, I would also put it in B tier. Just because the more there is to judge you off of also, the harder it's going to be for you to get a good score. You know what I mean? So, anyway. Then we've got The Mummy and The Mummy. I don't know why I said there wasn't going to be anything in S tier. I can tell you right now the 1999 Mummy is S tier. That's another movie I can watch very often. I love it. I think it... Brendan Fraser is great. Rachel Weisz, great. I like the plot. I like that it doesn't feel very exploitative, I guess. And it feels conscious of, like, the story it's telling and the area it's telling the story in. I haven't heard too much. To be fair, it's an older movie, so maybe the discourse just isn't as poppin' now. But I haven't heard too much in terms of, like, them being... of it, like, cultural appropriation and things like that, and them being disrespectful or, like, not putting care into it. And just to see the love, like, especially Brendan Fraser, I know he had a quote-unquote comeback recently, even though a lot of people were like, you know, there was no comeback. We've been watching The Mummy this whole time, which is true. I've been watching The Mummy this whole time. Oh, but you know, I guess I have to see, I'm not going to judge these as a series because in the sequel, I'm only judging the first one because that's the only one I saw. I don't think there's a second Mummy sequel, but there might be. But I only saw the first one if there's two. So I'm only judging the first one here.
By enemies often unimaginable. When there are battles to win for America's future, there is one constant.
It's just...
Marines.
Anyway, so I haven't seen any discourse about, you know, them being cultural appropriation or, like, incorrect language or stuff like this. I'm sure that happened. It was the 90s. Care was not always given to those things. But to see the love Brendan Fraser has for those movies now, you know, a lot of interviews I saw what he was doing with The Whale, they would ask him about The Mummy, and he was like, you know, it was just a good time. Or I watched I think it was GQ, but I could be wrong, but GQ does it, like, X, Y, and Z breaks down their filmography. Whoever does that on YouTube had Brendan Fraser do it, and just watching him talk about The Mummy and, you know, would he do a sequel or, like, I guess a fourth movie and stuff like that. And, like, also, I know I'm not judging the third movie right now, but I think it's really funny that the third Mummy movie has The Rock in it, and Brendan Fraser was like, we never saw The Rock because he was just CGI'd into the scorpion body. It's like, he was never actually there. We only ever saw him at premieres. I just thought that was a funny little bit of movie magic, so to speak. Anyway, yada, yada, yada. S-tier movie, Jumanji and The Mummy. I'm a little disappointed in myself that those are my S-tier movies, but I'm not surprised. The Mummy with Tom Hanks, I have nothing good to say about The Mummy with Tom Hanks. I don't think it needed to be made. I thought it was a bad movie. I didn't like it. I didn't get the plot. I don't think it needed to be made. It was bad. It's D tier. I'm leaving it there. Thank you. Moving on. We're almost in the home stretch, folks. So, we've got Glass and Split. Now, I know technically Glass and Split are all part of Unbreakable and we're all intended to be together. But because of the gap and because I don't think it's widely known and it wasn't necessarily, not clearly advertised, but like it kind of took till Glass to come out to kind of be advertised that those three went together. But I haven't seen Unbreakable, so I'm not putting it in here. Split, I know, got mixed reviews in terms of the representation of having multiple personalities. I don't want to say I think it's dissociative identity disorder, but I could be wrong. That might not be what he has. But I remember people saying it's not an accurate representation. It's a very dangerous representation. Whereas other people said it was good, and also considering the context of it being not a superhero movie, but like kind of in this. Once you see Glass, we've kind of shifted into this realm of like collecting a group of powerful individuals. It's less serious, if that makes sense, but obviously representations of mental health are always serious and should be done accurately. So I liked Split. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I really enjoyed it. I think James McAvoy, criticisms aside for the representation of a mental health disorder, I think being able to play different characters and shift so naturally and make it believable that this is a different entity is really hard to do. And any actor who can do that, whether they're representing a mental health disorder or, you know, just playing multiple characters in the same movie, is really cool. This is a good little sort of example. Although Well, I don't think this is a mental health disorder, actually. I went to go see, basically, Jekyll and Hyde the musical down in Miami this weekend. And so, obviously, they had the same guy playing Jekyll and Hyde. And just, like, the little shifts he did, you know, the hair down was the more obvious one. But the change in voice and posture and, like, the little things, the little shifts he made to make it clear that he was now Hyde, the bad guy, you know, were really cool. And so I think James McAvoy did a fantastic job at making those little shifts and changes. So I'm gonna put Split at B tier. I wanted to put it at C, but I feel like that's too low for it. I think it's a good movie. Now Glass, I initially thought I was gonna put higher, but I actually think that's gonna go in C, just because when it came out, I had no intention of seeing it. And then I found out that and Split and Unbreakable were all connected, and this was kind of the first movie to like show the connection, because we meet all three of the characters in there. And I think it was a really interesting role to see Samuel L. Jackson play. However, now that I'm thinking back to Glass, I don't remember too much about it. I remember it stressed me out. They were like in, you know, like a mental health facility, because they're all being detained, because at the end of Split, Homeboy gets captured. So they're all being detained, and Glass is the mastermind behind this, who has bones of glass, which also everyone kept saying made them think of the SpongeBob thing. But he's got bones of glass, but he's assembling this team. But like beyond that, it's like I think there was like a fight scene outside with a van, but like isn't there always a fight scene outside with a van? Anyway, not very memorable, but I think it was really cool to see these three characters not even interact, but exist in the same space, and kind of how they each processed it differently, or interpreted it, or accepted it, or existed in it differently. Anyway, good. I need to go see Unbreakable, and then I'll rewatch Split and Glass, I think. And then I'll give you my review. Finally, this is not a movie, but I had beef, and everyone knows I am a big fan of Law and Order. I only watched the original Law and Order, though. No SVU over here, no Criminal Intent, no nothing. Original Law and Order. I watch that show religiously. Anytime it is on, anytime I can find it, I will sit down and have it on in the background while I'm doing literally anything. And then I finally sat down, I think a year, maybe 2 years ago, and watched it straight through, like in order, because I've never actually seen it in order, even though I've seen every episode about 5 times. So Law and Order, S tier for me. It is my favorite show in the whole world. Also, I picked the Law and Order promo with little Benjamin Bratt in it, because I love him. Anyway, yada yada yada. New Law and Order. Okay, after all these years off the air, Law and Order is coming back. The OG Law and Order is coming back. And I made it through 10 minutes, I think, of the new season, which really bummed me out, because it had Anthony Anderson, who was in the OG Law and Order. So I was I wasn't going to watch it urgently. And I was like, well, it's got him in it. It's got, you know, Jack McCoy in it. What's that guy's name? Sam Watterson. So I was hopeful it would be good. I made it through maybe 10 minutes of the first episode, and I was like, I can't do this. This is not Law and Order. I do not recognize this as OG Law and Order. And I turned it off, and I never looked at it again, so I'm leaving it in D tier. I'm not going to talk about this anymore, because I don't think anyone cares. It was just for me personally. I wanted everyone to know what I thought about the new Law and Order. They besmirched the name, the good name of Law and Order. Anyway, that is my tier list. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if I missed anything. There were a lot of things I thought of, but I hadn't seen the sequels for, because I, on principle, do not watch sequels, really. So I couldn't really talk about them, like Space Jam. I haven't seen the new Space Jam. I heard it was good, though, and I really liked the original Space Jam. And what is it? The Looney Tunes Back in Action, which I know technically aren't the same universe, but if you look them up on Google, they show as being, like, connected, because, you know, it's live action Looney Tunes. So the Space Jam movies, He's All That one on Netflix with Addison Rae, that 90s show versus that 70s show, which I heard really bad reviews of. But anyway, I hadn't seen the sequels for any of those, so that's why I didn't talk about them. But if you want, I will check them out and watch them, and then do a little comparison. I can do another tier list, so just let me know. Hopefully, I know I said this last week and the week before, hopefully next week, the light of my life, the moon to my stars, my wife, Eleanor, will be back. If not, it'll be me again. I'll be doing something else fun or really boring, because it's really hard to come up with ideas by myself. But anyway, I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And yeah, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Don't Quote Us on That. And we're on Twitter at Don't Quote Us 27. I love chit-chatting with you guys, so, just reach out there, comment on our things, like, follow, subscribe, yada, 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 all that good stuff. And I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. Don't quote me on that. One day we'll have an outro, but it's not today.